Hey guys, today we're going to have a look at mixed ratio questions, because the hardest thing about ratios questions is figuring out what kind of ratio question is it, so I know how to solve. So have a look at this picture, for example. I've got loads of cats and dogs here, and just by the looks on the cats' faces, I'm pretty sure the dogs have got them outnumbered. But with so many cats and dogs on the page, I find it difficult to work out how many dogs there are for each cat. So what I could ask you to do is simplify this ratio down. For a smaller number of cats, how many dogs would there be? Or I could tell you the ratio of cats to dogs and then say there are actually this many cats and ask you to work out how many dogs there were. That would be finding an equivalent ratio. Or I could tell you how many animals there are altogether and then get you to split the number of animals down into a ratio of cats and dogs. That would be sharing by ratios. So there's really a lot of different options, and it's really important to pay attention to the wording. So let's get started and hopefully clear up some of your doubts. Here I've got a ratio of green fish to orange fish. Ratios just show proportions. That doesn't mean that there's necessarily one green fish and 5 orange fish. This diagram may just represent a small little section of a very big pond or lake. But what it shows is that for each green fish, there are 5 orange fish. If there were twice as many green fish, there would be twice as many orange fish. It just shows the proportion. There are 5 times more orange fish than green fish. So I can write this ratio. I would start with writing it in words to make it really clear what the numbers represent. So on the green side, I've got 1 green fish, and on the orange side, I've got 5 orange fish. Now this is already a simplified ratio. I couldn't simplify this anymore because there is no common factor between 1 and 5 that I could divide both sides by and still have whole number answers. Let's start with this simple example. So we've got 5 orange fish for every 1 green fish. Now suppose there are actually 8 green fish in the pond, and the ratio of green to orange fish is as described above. Now it's really helpful that I've written this in words first, and you should always do this too. I've even made it even more helpful to point out that this is 1 green fish, and they told us that there are actually 8 green fish. So thinking about what kind of question this is, well, we are given a ratio, the 1 to 5 ratio for the green to orange fish, and we are told one other value which belongs on one side of the ratio. We're told the value that belongs on the green side of the ratio. This is an equivalent ratio problem because what we are going to work out is how many orange fish go along with this 8 green fish to make another ratio, a green to orange ratio, which is equivalent to this ratio, 1 to 5. So let's set it up. If I know that there are 5 orange fish for every 1 green fish, so the green to orange ratio is 1 to 5, I'm trying to work out how many orange fish will go along with these 8 green fish. So I've lined up my green fish nicely here. If there were 8 of these green fish, so I've multiplied this by some value, I need to multiply the number of orange fish by the same value. So I've multiplied 1 by 8 to get 8, and that's a value you're going to have to work out. In this case, it was pretty simple to see. We multiplied by 8. We'll need to multiply the other side by 8 as well. So 5 times 8, that's 40. But always be careful, because notice I didn't actually ask you a question there. Read the question carefully before you begin, as well as after you're finished, because they might not ask you what is the equivalent ratio. They might ask you something like this. How many orange fish are there? And how many fish are there altogether? Well, orange fish, that's just this side of the ratio. Not the ratio itself, but just the 40. And how many fish are there altogether? Well, there are 40 orange fish, and we were told there were 8 green fish, so together that would be 48 fish altogether. Always go back and read the question before you move on. So there are 40 orange fish, and there are 48 fish altogether. Right, example 2. So again, I'm starting with the same ratio, a green to orange ratio of 1 to 5. Just the same picture, it all looks exactly the same. The important thing is the information I give you next. Given that there are 114 fish in the pond and in the given ratio above, so this time I'm giving you not the number of green fish or the orange fish, this is the number of fish there are all together. That's what makes this a sharing by ratio question. You're given a ratio, and you're given a total value. It does not belong on either side of the ratio. First, we're going to work out how many green fish there are, then we're going to work out how many orange fish there are. So what we're doing is we're splitting the 114 fish all together into the ratio of 1 to 5. And to do that, our first step is to not divide this by 2, but to divide this in the number of parts necessary to split so that there's 1 part going to green and 5 parts going to orange. Make a little bit of space here, and the total number of parts is 1 plus 5 is 6 parts. The number of fish per part would be 1/6 of 114. So I'll work out 1/6 of 114, which is 19 fish per part, because the green fish is 1 part and the orange fish is 5 parts. So I'll do 1 times 19 for the green fish and 5 times 19 for the orange fish. It's going to be 19 green fish and 95 orange fish. You can always double check at the end. We split 114 into this ratio. We should end up with a number of green fish, which if I added it to the number of orange fish, it makes 114. Does it? Yes. Okay, again, remember, check your question before you finish. Make sure you've actually answered it, and I haven't yet. I've given a ratio, but I haven't answered part A. There are 19 green fish. Part B, there are 95 orange fish. Right, simplifying ratios or the unitary ratio. Now this time I'm giving you a different ratio. I'm giving you 84 orange fish and 28 green fish. Now obviously I don't have all these fish here, I just got a small section of fish here. What I want you to do is I want you to work out a simplified ratio for the number of orange and green fish, so I can easily see what the proportion of orange to green fish is. Now before we do this, notice that I've given you the information in a different order this time. I told you the number of orange fish first and the number of green fish afterwards. So when I want to work out the 1 to n ratio for the number of orange fish to green fish, the 1 side represents the orange fish and the n side represents the green fish. The order is important. It has to follow the same order as the wording in the question. Now this is a simplifying ratios question because you're given a ratio, and it can be given in words or it could be given in ratio form. This time it's given in words, that there are 84 goldfish and 28 green fish. So you're given a ratio and you're asked to simplify it, to write a ratio in a different form. So in the 1 to n ratio, the unitary ratio. Okay, so let's write our ratio first in words so that we're very clear on the order of things. The 84 were orange and the 28 were green. Work out the simplified ratio. To simplify this ratio, we simplify the same way we would simplify a fraction. We're looking for the highest common factor that we can divide both sides by. And that highest common factor is 28. 28 obviously divides by 28, and the answer is 1. And 84 divides by 28, and the answer is 3. So we've got part A, we've got our simplified ratio. Check to make sure you can't divide that down anymore. We can't. They are both whole numbers with no other common factor. Okay, so let's go into part B. Work out the 1 to n ratio for orange to green fish. Now you might make a mistake of saying, oh, this is the 1 to n ratio, but it's not. It's the n to 1 ratio. We need a 1 on this side. So what do we do to 3 to make it 1? You cannot subtract, so don't say take away 2. We divide by itself. So we're going to divide by 3, which means we need to divide the other side by 3 as well. 1 divided by 3, don't say you can't do that, you can do that, but it's going to be a recurring decimal, so we might as well leave it as a fraction, then it's going to be exact, 1/3. Now I know I said that I couldn't divide this one down any further. I can't divide it down any further to simplify it. Now it's still whole numbers, and we never simplify it to decimals or fractions. However, for the part B of this question, we were asked to put it in the 1 to something format. That could have any value as n. Okay, so again, checking over my question, making sure I've answered it correctly. Part A, the answer is the simplified ratio, 3 to 1. And part B is the 1 to n ratio, 1 to 1/3. Now, what kind of question is this? I've got a model dinosaur that has a scale of 1 to 12, so I've given you a ratio. This means that for every 1 centimeter of the model, the real life size is 12 centimeters, right? It's 12 times the size. Let me just make this clearer for you by writing the ratio with meaningful titles for what each side means. So this is the scale model, the smaller size, and this is the real size, the actual dinosaur. The head of the dinosaur model is 8 centimeters in length. How long is the head of the real dinosaur? What kind of question is this before we go any further? We're given a ratio and we're given another value. So we're not trying to simplify this ratio. What are we going to do with this other value? Does this value belong on one side of the ratio? Or is this a value that needs to be divided or split or shared into this ratio? By writing out clearly what these numbers mean, this is the scale model and this is the real size. This is the scale model, that's the real size. And we are told that the model has a head with a length of 8 centimeters. So this is the model size. This belongs on one side of the ratio. So what kind of a question is it? Given a ratio and another value that belongs on one side of the ratio, that's an equivalent ratio question. So let's set it up. We've got a 1 to 12 ratio and we need to work out the 8 to something ratio. How did I get from 1 to 8? I multiplied by 8, right? So we need to do the same thing to the 12. 12 times 8 is 96. Again, reread the question before you move on. How long is the head of the real dinosaur? Do not put this ratio as your answer. Your answer is the real dinosaur has a head of length 96 centimeters long, which is pretty long. That's almost a meter. Okay, here are some ratios questions for you. It's a mixture of ratios question. Before you go through answering this, take a minute, have a look at each of these questions and identify what kind of ratio question is it. Hit pause if you need a bit of time for this. Okay, what kind of question is question 1? You're given a jar filled with pennies and nickels in the ratio of 5 to 3, and there are 30 nickels in the jar. So we're told one side of the jar. How many coins are there altogether? Well, you know the nickel side, you need to work out the penny side, and you're given a ratio. This is an equivalent ratio question. Right, next one. Your shop carries 20-inch TVs and 40-inch TVs. Don't let those numbers confuse you with the question. The ratio of these TVs is 4 to 5. If the shop carries 500 televisions in the 20-inch size, so that's one side of that ratio, how many televisions does it carry in total? Okay, again, we're given a ratio, and one side of that ratio, that's another equivalent ratio question. Next, there are 600 pupils in a school. The ratio of boys to girls in the school is 3 to 5. How many girls and how many boys are there in the school? This time we're given a ratio, the boys to girls 3 to 5, and we're given 600 pupils in total. Not 600 boys, not 600 girls, but 600 in total. So you're given a ratio and a total. This is a sharing question. We're splitting that 600 into the ratio. Question 4. Angles of a triangle are in the ratio 1, 3, and 8. Find the measures of the 3 angles of this triangle. Remember that angles of a triangle add to 180. So they might not have given us that hint there, but it's something that we should know. The 180 degrees is not one of those angles, it's the sum of those angles, so it's the total. So we're given a ratio and we're given a total. What kind of ratio question is that? Again, it's a sharing ratios question. And question 5, a bookshop has a total of 2,240 textbooks. These books are categorized in either science or art books. The ratio of science to art books is 2 to 5. How many books of each type are there? Again, we're given a ratio of science books to art books, and we're given a total. So what kind of question is that? Again, that's a sharing question. Okay, take a minute now, knowing what kind of questions those are, and go ahead and work out your answers. Hit pause if you need time, and I'm sure you do. Remember to set up your ratios in words first, and show all your working. Okay, I hope you've hit pause. We're ready to take up the answers. First question, is 80 coins in total. Be careful, you're not asked how many pennies there are. You're asked how many there are in total. So you've written an equivalent ratio of nickels to pennies, and you're adding together your nickels and pennies. Question 2. Again, be careful because you're trying to work out how many televisions there are in total. They told you how many televisions there are of 20-inch sizes. You worked out the equivalent ratio, so the number in 20-inch sizes, 500, and the number in 40-inch sizes, and added those together. Question 3. Sharing by ratios. Now remember that they asked both values, how many boys and how many girls. Question 4. Again, sharing. And the angles are 15, 45, and 120 degrees, respectively. Now, when you see respectively in a ratios question, what that means is I've given you the values in the same order as in the question. The 15 degrees goes with the 1 in the ratio, the 45 degrees goes with the 3, and the 120 degrees goes with the 8. Finally, our last question. There are 640 science books and 1,600 art books. By sharing that in the ratio 2 to 5, check to make sure that 640 plus the 1,600 will add up to the total of 2,240 textbooks. I hope that this has helped to clear things up for you. Please let me know if you still have any doubts.